Welcome back to Word Blindness. This is Juliette Hahn with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. You know what? This is the first time I think we didn't laugh, which is kind of sad. We didn't laugh as we joined. I know. That makes me... That's a bummer. Yeah. And I guess neither of us really are giggly today. I mean, maybe we will be giggly as we continue, but we really didn't it wasn't like our woohoo, we're starting. However, in this episode, because we just finished this is going to be probably episode 32 or 33, which is really, I mean, we've reflected and we love that. So fun stuff coming out on the kind of reflections as we come to a season ending before we start a new season. But we really thought before we ended our season that something that has come up a number of times for us is people that we've asked to be on the podcast, like, oh, I'm dyslexic, or, I think I'm dyslexic. And then we've said, hey, would you want to be on the podcast? And it's like, oh no. Oh, wait, why? What do you mean? And there's two things that we've kind of come across, and this is kind of what we wanted to dive into. Two things. One, someone has said, like a number of people have said to me, well, I was really never officially diagnosed. People just have said to me, I think you are, or like, I've done the checklist, but like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to say I'm a dyslexic. So that's one. The second is people that have been diagnosed, or again, maybe didn't get the official diagnosis, but know, like it runs in families. They know that they are. They're not comfortable talking about it publicly on a podcast, which both have found, I've been taken back, I have to say, like, especially with the people that have been behind both of them. I'm like, oh, wait, that's so interesting. So I would love for you to kind of reflect a little bit on that.
It's being, talking about, first off, we talk about this all the time, the label. There's that, that image behind it, that stigma, whatever kind of words you want to tie with it. Some people don't even want to put theirs. For example, you break your ankle, you go in orthopedic. And then now you've got, if you have depression, there's meds that can help them, but I'm not going to take it. But why? This, to this point is, and I think I probably say it every time around here, just the self-image that goes with this, the self-esteem, and being laughed at, that some of them have a wall up so big, so, it's a great China wall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad. And then there's some people making that excuse. Oh, I don't feel like I can say it because I haven't been formally. That's just another way of, kind of hiding behind that and not saying it. I've got people I know, the son's dyslexic and dad knows he is, but they won't recognize it. It's, I guess in some cultures too, that's that's the thing.
It's a weakness. People look at it as.
Mm-hmm. When I was in Russia, that mental health, that's a no over there. So Eastern Europeans, so it comes from where you come from, but the longer you don't address it, the closer you end up getting to me. And it's sad to watch it because you're not living even remotely close to a full life when you're not able to have that conversation and about it. And so it is obviously hereditary, so it's not going to stop. So you might as well start talking about it now, because you're going to be talking about it for a long, long time. It's because it's just going to be passed, right down the line.
Yeah. And I've about 1,000 things to say to all what you just said. I love that. A couple different things. And one of the things we were kind of, we were starting to do some resources for the foundation. And so I was putting together a checklist. And one of the things on the checklist, I have to say, because as we've talked about, even though there was understanding in my house, I wasn't diagnosed officially until later in life. And it was because And again, like if you look at the like if I pull a piece of paper, does it say on there? No, it was like learning, reading, which we now know is dyslexia. But so for much of my schooling, I just thought, again, I was dumb. And so when I was able to say, wait, I'm dyslexic ADHD, I actually felt better because it was like, okay, no, there's a reason behind it. I'm just not dumb, which some people flip that. And so this is like, it's so very interesting when we really dive in it and talk to people. So we're going to go down kind of one of these rabbit holes. But so again, I was going through the list and I started kind of laughing, but then kind of getting pissed off. Like, why wasn't there people in my life as a kid in education, not my parents, but as teachers? Because again, and you talk about because the education, but that wasn't like, wait, all of these things, maybe we need to look a little further. Yes, they were like, okay, she just has a reading thing. We're going to give her support. But it is, again, I'm not going to say why, because back then they didn't know about it as much. It's like one of those things, but you kind of look at the checklist and I'm like, okay, if you check 5 of this, you might be dyslexic. Because like I was checked like 15 and I could actually make 5 different pages about if you check everything. Like it is clearly screams in your face. Now we even talked about, I didn't really get the label until my son was being diagnosed. And that was when I was like, well, wait a second. This is exactly me. But because our dyslexia showed up a little different and it's a different time, it's different. So talking to a lot of people in our generation, and I'm going to say my generation, I'm a little older than you, but I'll put you in. I'll put you in there.
That's right.
you might not like to be put in my generation, but there is a lot of people that, as we started this podcast, that have said to me, well, wait, I can't be on the podcast because I was never officially diagnosed. And I'm like, well, stop. But you just told me literally all of these things. And they're like, yeah, but like, I don't feel comfortable. What if I'm called out? Like, I don't know that it is. So there's that. Then the label, because we've gone through it now. Sometimes my kid will be like, stop with the label. Stop. Why do you have to say everyone's dyslexic or this and that? You've had a similar situation. Because a label to some people makes you seem or feel weaker, where to me, it empowered me because it was like, well, I can actually say, this is why. I can have actually, and I'm going to take it back and then you can go, but it's the understanding. I understood now how I learn and why I do certain things. And that's why we started this whole podcast. That's why you started the foundation, the Sopel Foundation for Dyslexia, so long ago, because of that understanding. And it really seems so simple, but as we have gone and we've been working together now for almost a year, a little under a year, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating that it's not as acknowledged, and it should be very simple. It's very black and white if you think about it on paper, but then when you go down all the rabbit holes and you see that it's not as black and white. But it is frustrating because it's like, okay, you see this, you see how that kid learns, you see that kid's doing it in school. He's clearly dyslexic. Let's get the help so it doesn't get worse. Go ahead. I know you have 1,000 things to say.
To that point is, they're clearly dyslexic to us. It's clearly we're dumb to them. Because majority of the deans, superintendents, principals, teachers don't have ADHD or don't have dyslexia, so they have zero clue. They've got no idea what we're talking about. They don't know there's another way to think. It's only one way. And that's where, obviously you're talking about the education piece of it. You're absolutely right. It's pretty black and white, but going to be a special ed teacher, there's one page of dyslexia. Yeah. And, so what is that? So they really have, again, this is just in my mind out of teachers. I'd be shocked, if 5% of teachers in North America understood dyslexia.
Yeah. And it is, because dyslexia is, now, as much as I say it's black and white, it is complex. And I remember when Montgomery was diagnosed, the doctor was like, gosh, he is so complex because his strengths are so strong, but his weaknesses are so weak. It's like, this is crazy. Now, doing what we were able to do, the intervention, we were able to get those weaknesses to a level, but we talk about the strengths and weaknesses, right? And I mean, the thing that sucks in school is they were never able to like get the strengths where they could go off the charts. He's going to have to figure that out as he gets older. They were able to get the weaknesses a little bit. So it wasn't as, oh my gosh, such a discrepancy. But it is everyone's dyslexia, as we talk about. There's a lot of similarities of things that we do, but there's also a lot of things that we figure out how to get around that we then make our dyslexia and stuff a little different. And which is really fascinating. I mean, and the defense mechanisms, you guys have heard us talk about that. Not only the defense mechanisms, but the workarounds, like, which I find we'll have to do a whole episode on workarounds, because some of the workarounds are really fascinating. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing a workaround until I'm working with someone and showing, they're like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, well, I can't do it just A to B. I have to, so there's so much to it.
And what do they say? 80% of kids that are struggling reading have some sort of dyslexia. I think it is something like that. Like, so
yeah,
there's direct correlation, with the two when it comes to school with reading, but there's no understanding. There's no understanding out there of what that is, and what a workaround is, and how to talk to them, and what this and that, by any of them. And a lot of them don't want to know. A lot of them don't care to know. You always say, was there not one teacher? Obviously, there wasn't one for me.
Mm-mm.
I don't know. I don't know anybody else who has said they've had that one. So, we've talked to a lot of people. So there's a lot of teachers that are there for the paycheck. Not all, no question, but it's just no understanding to be able to think that there's another way to operate, another way to learn, another way to think. They just think that the IQ portion, I'll leave that up to you, but we're just lazy. And I wouldn't say dumb, as much as just being lazy. And then when the ADHD of not listening, you're an ass of a kid and you're lazy. Those are probably the biggest things. I wouldn't say dumb in as much as that, but they just don't understand, and a lot of them don't care to understand, and that's the biggest portion.
Well, and I think, and I know exactly what you're saying. And it is a lot of that. It's coming down from, Congress, or this is how you guys have to teach. So there's a lot of teachers that also have their hands tied. So it's like, okay, I'm doing the best that I can. I'm trying to figure this out, on my own. This is the reading program I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, again, we talk about this, the reading program. There's reading programs that can be brought in that actually everyone can learn to read, and not everyone would be as far behind. But of course, it's not done that way. And we've talked about that. It is. I have to say, because I've come across so many people that will say, I want to understand. I don't know how. Like, we're not being taught this, right? Or, kids right now, because of the kids, the ages of my kids, talking to the kids that are going into education now. And it's like, I want to make a difference. I didn't have I was good in school, but I didn't have the best situation. There was times where I it was like, well, this is how you have to do it. And I want to be that teacher that is able to say, I see you as a human, right? I see you as a kid. I want to be able to give you the tools to be able to make school more fun. I mean, the way American education is, there's stuff all about it. I mean, it's so broken. There's so much that needs to be fixed on so many levels. I mean, it is a broken system that it's surprising that it just continues. To me, I know you're like, I'm not surprised, but to me, it's like, just, let's get off our asses and fix this. This is ridiculous.
Well, because it's not broken to them, because they're not dyslexic. They don't have it. Nobody's come to talk to them. Nobody's explained to them in their terms what it is. So, I always say, 95% of relationships are fake. Assumption is death. We assume that they're trying to do something, or you've got a lobbyist, 501c4 here that doesn't have it. So you are lobbying for all the wrong things, all for yourself, right? So that's, you always say dyslexics advocating for dyslexics. So it's somebody with full understanding of what it is to be able to make that full change. And you're talking about, obviously, U.S. is 350 million people. At Canada, there's 40 million. You're talking 400 million people here in North America. It's not easy to change, but we're assuming. Assumption's death. These people don't know what it is. They don't have an understanding of what it is. So how can you go and set a policy? How can you go and rewrite anything? How can you do X, Y, and Z without any of the understanding? And that's been my frustrating part. Since starting the foundation, you see all these little, I call mom and pops. They want to be the hero. They don't want to work together. The more people that get together and bring it to the people, so that they can understand it, the better off we're here. But it's, the selfishness, which is obviously in a lot of this world, is what's controlling this portion of the world drastically. And there's, and it all falls on every kid that's going to sit in that classroom and struggle.
Yeah. And again, another point is, so like, I will agree with a lot of what you're saying. There's a couple things right now, there's so many different viewpoints also. And I think this is the problem. There's so many groups that are like, well, no, this is how, and I'm not going to get down all of it because I'm not an expert in any of this, but there's there's all the names. There's all the names. If you are like listening to this podcast and saying, well, no, you guys are not right, because there's all these things being tried to be done in different states. There's, we talk to different doctors that are saying, well, yes, this is what this philosophy is, but this philosophy is not seen by this group, because this group really thinks that literacy should be brought this way. This group thinks that literacy should be taught this way. So from when we were younger, 100% dyslexia is talked about way more. It is talked about way more. People are trying to do things, but there's not any unison. There's not any let's see. It's like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff changing. So I know when Montgomery was in school, there was the reading program that was changed that actually screwed him. And then I want to say it was changed a couple more times, as he was going through. And it's like, how is a kid going to even grasp it? If someone is learning different, we're changing all these things. We just need to come together and come up with it. Now, that's a huge feat, as you said, with the country as big as it is. But these are the kind of conversations that need to be had, because people need to think about it. Again, if literacy or the way reading was taught in all schools where a dyslexic could learn, instead of that dyslexic being pulled out, or that slow reader, because again, sometimes it's like, oh, well, they're a young kid, so they're not grasping it right away. They're not dyslexic, but they're still struggling. There are systems in literacy that actually kids can grasp faster than the ones that they have now. And I know that for a fact. I have a lot of teachers in my world. And so we have talked to people about it. And that's where, to me, it's so frustrating, because it's like, okay, but we know this. Well, I am so confused of why it's not being adopted. And it's like, oh, it's adopted here. Oh yeah, they're trying it here. Oh, this state is doing a pilot. That's all great. But okay, if that pilot works, then let's everyone get on board. But it's not done that way, because no one is, as you said, the egos and the fights. It's like, well, we're trying to win here and we're trying to win here. And it's the kids that are getting hurt. That's why we do this. It's the kids that are being hurt. It's not the adults. It's the kids that are sitting in the desks that are, that are not being able to read, and then are falling through, because it's like, well, we're changing this and we're changing that. And that's where the change needs to happen.
100%. There's not a lot of people that I've come across that are in it for the kids. Not, again, not saying there isn't. I just haven't come across lost. They're coming. They're in it for themselves. They're in it for their paycheck. They're in it for their ego, not for the kids. And it's sad that they can lay their head on a pillow every night and be okay with that, and not come together and not try to do what's right for each kid. They just let me puff my chest out and put my name out there, or do this or do that, and it gets me angry. It gets me very upset that this is where we are. I can clearly see what you're trying to do, and for you doing that, fuck you.
Yeah. I mean, and then that takes about what we started the conversation about. So then you have the adults that, right, are our generation, older than our generation, that don't really want to talk about their dyslexia, or they're in positions because, again, we talk about this, IQ, dyslexia, usually there's a higher IQ. So a lot of the people that we're coming across that, oh, I'm dyslexic. I mean, there's a couple that run companies that I was really surprised at. They were like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not going on board buying this. And I'm like, oh, wait, why? We just had this great conversation about how you're just they're like, yeah, no, there's not a lot of people in my workspace that know about it. And so one of the reasons why we, really when we talk about it is, and one of the things that you say, you don't want any kid feeling like you did. You don't want any kid sitting at the desk. So when they get older, we want to empower those kids at a young age. Because there is one thing that studies have shown, that kids that, and if whether it's a private school, public school, kids that are being taught and learning. So I'm going to take it to Montgomery because I know that that's an example I can use. In the school that he used, that went to for dyslexia, they talked about dyslexia. This is why you learn this way. This is how, you can empower yourself. They made it where it was like, okay, I'm okay with it. Right. Is there every day that, Montgomery is like, oh, I'm proud of this? No, there's times where he's like, stop. Leave. Like, he gets annoyed at me now in this phase of our lives, but he's also a teenager. So we'll just chalk that up. But that is one thing. Before he went to that school, I remember when he was diagnosed, and it was in third grade. And like at the middle of third grade, then he did go to a separate school. But I remember he said to me, Mom, they had to do like some sort of presentation. It was during a time where there was a presentation. He's like, can I teach, his teacher, Mrs. Mold, who I absolutely loved, and my classmates, can I tell them that I'm dyslexic and show them what that means? And I said, oh yeah, why do you want to do that? And I remember him saying, well, I just want them to know. And he said it in his own kid way, but how I took it is, I just want them to know I'm not dumb. This is why I always had to get pulled out. This is why I was the only kid with the iPad. This is why. And I remember being like, okay, let's put something together. And he did. And then there was another where it's like, you talked about who you were, and he put, I am dyslexic. And I remember being like, oh my God, I'm so proud of him that he's like, I knew he was processing, but we talked a lot about it once he was diagnosed. It was like, okay, and this is what Mom, okay. And he's like, well, you never said those words. And I was like, I just called myself ADHD, but, kind of umbrella it all, but it's dyslexia, pop up, Aunt Lizzie, and then one of his cousins at the time was just getting diagnosed. And it was like, so we were able to really talk about it and make it like, yeah, school's going to be hard. It's never going to be easy. Let's just throw that out there. Right. Let's not say we're going to try to make it where it doesn't suck as much. Like, we're really going to try to make it where there might be days that you're like, okay, I got this, instead of, this place is the worst place ever, like how you were. And so that is why we are doing this initiative. That's why we're talking so much about it, because it's like those kids, we were really fortunate that, we had the funds that we were able to do it, but it's all the kids that are not in school districts, that don't have the knowledge, or that they don't have the money that they're able to do it, that are sitting at those desks, that are the ones like, oh, I'm not okay with this. And then as they get older, they might be the ones that are like, no, I don't want to talk about it. Right. I still don't want to talk about it. And as we said, it's going to come out somewhere, and you're not living a full life until you can accept all of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your good, your bad, whatever it is. When you can accept all of that and say, okay, it might not be my favorite part of me, but I got to deal with it. That's when you can live a full life. And that's why, we are doing what we're doing, because of that, really, right there.
And talk about, those schools only take kids that they know that they can advance. on to make their numbers look good. So,
I don't know about
somebody,
all. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to poke the balls this morning.
so they want to make sure that you're on a certain level so that you can excel and get better so they can have better numbers. So people don't be fooled. They're in the game too. It's comes back to the understanding, knowing your kid, advocating your kid. Knowledge is everything. Relatability. All my stupid taglines are there for a reason, and every kid deserves it. An opportunity to succeed in life, whatever that may be. Everybody's path is different. Everybody is meant for different things, but no kid should struggle. And he talked about the understanding, and he explained to his classmates, we don't as a society, we always talk about bullying. We don't do shit about bullying, because most kids, they're not going to laugh at a kid, handicapped kid in a wheelchair or a blind kid, because they can relate with it. They can put themselves there. But it's kids like us who get bullied, who get laughed at, get harassed and hazed. And where's the education piece to them? So there's an understanding of what's going on. Zero, none. Why? Because you had superintendents, you have deans, you have whatever titles you want to give. I don't have any of this stuff. So they don't touch bullying. They're full of shit. Don't do that. Well, don't do that. Let's talk about why somebody's doing something. You obviously autism, all that information. Everybody knows, right? There's so much information for out there, but for us, it's you can't. You're dumb. You can't read, or you can't tie your shoes, or you're left some. How about some education, teaching, as Montgomery taught his class, teaching classes in schools about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what you're meaning about the bully, it's that there's awareness about it, but it's not getting to the root. It's a Band-Aid. It's, and that's because education, it's like, I'm trying to think of when that, I feel like it was when our kids were little, it was like the anti-bullying thing. Cause I know when we were in school, they didn't really talk about, I don't feel like that there was like campaigns, but like, I know as the kids got older,
they talk about it, but they don't fix it.
It's not the root of it. Right. It's not the root. It's like, if you see someone being bullied, stand up, which is all great, but like, why is the bully, why is that kid doing it? And we've talked about this a million times, that there's not a kid at a certain age, when you see that, no kid wants to be the dick. No kid wants to be, the bitchy girl. Like that's not what they like. Hey, I'm going to wake up and, we talked about this before. Yeah. There's something behind it. And okay, it might not be dyslexia, learning disability. There could be something else, but let's find out. And when you find out, that's when you can fix it. There's, when America kind of and I don't want to go this way, but with the gun violence, I remember saying, and everyone kind of looking at me, and I was like, okay, but the kid that's doing that, can we find out, like, why did that kid do that? Right. Like, and I know I'm not saying that it's okay by any means. That's not what I'm saying at all. But like, this is the problem. We're letting things like boil up. Like, we need to figure it out. We need to say, okay, Johnny's in third grade. He seems like he's turning into a bit of a dick. Let's find out what is going on with Johnny. Why is he, trying to make other kids laugh? Why is he picking on certain people? Why is he doing this and doing that? Again, it might not because he's struggling in school, but I would say, I would put odds, if I was a betting person, I would say more than likely it's something to do with that. And again, it could be something in the house, but let's let Johnny know that he's seen and we care at an age where he can actually be, it's like, okay, thank you for noticing. When a kid gets older and they're teenagers and all of a sudden now you're like, well, wait a second, something's going on there. You've already lost them. You've already lost them because they also see, I'm not being seen. no one really cares that I've been doing this. Like, a kid, like, why are they getting away with it? When you have adults just kind of letting you go and being like, okay, just get out of the way. Like, we don't feel like dealing with you. A kid is going to internalize that. So if we can get to the root of that and fix that, everything's going to be much better. And I would actually really argue with someone if they disagree with that, because I do think that's where the problem is lying. It's right at that time where you see a kid starting to do, a kid hiding, a kid going to the nurse all the time, a kid, being like, I need to get out. The kid that you talked about that used to hit the kid in the back of the head every time he had to go read out loud. Like, hey, teacher, let me put two and two together. Again, that's not, the teacher has so many kids in their class. The teacher also has their own life. So we're not blaming it on everyone. We're just saying everyone just be a little bit more aware in these situations, because it could just make things in the long run better.
And just understanding, what that is. I know I had one person telling the teacher about ADHD and what it is, and the teacher was arguing.
Right.
And there's that ego comes into play. I know the best. That's where you got to advocate for your kid, because each kid's, it is different. And that teacher doesn't know anything about it. And you have to teach them whatever that may be. And, self-esteem is and always will be number one. And that's what everybody needs to focus first and foremost. Homework, classroom, whatever it is, just that self-esteem comes first. You lose that, and then you lose everything.
Mm-hmm. And for the parent, that, right, is like, I can't control what's happening in the classroom. You can control some of the stuff at home. And so one of the things I do want to, it's not out yet, but we're going to talk about this on the next bunch of podcasts, but we're going to have like a resource tab on the foundation website that's going to give more information. So like, it's coming up to the end of the school year. You have your IEP. Hey, here's the checklist. And I wish we're creating this because there's need, but as we're like talking about it, I was saying to Brent, I wish I had this every year, where it's like, okay, you're coming up at the end. Here's the springtime. Don't forget to check in with the school to make sure X, Y, and Z is done. Okay. It's almost school. You've gotten your kids, classroom assignments. Where's the IEP? Have you done what, Brent talks about, the roadmap, just making that 1 or 2 pages to hand to each, teacher? Did you reach out? We're going to make checklists. We're also going to have, it's like, hey, I might be dyslexic. Am I dyslexic? Some checklists that you can kind of go through and give you steps. We're going to have that on the website. I would say on the foundation, you can get the foundation in a couple different places, brentsopelfoundation.org, but you can also do it on the new, it's called sopelfoundation.org. So on either of that, and there will be a tab that says resources. And if there's things that you guys are out there going, wait, I would love for this to happen, reach out, because there might be things that we're not thinking about that we can actually do, because there's a lot of other resources that I'm not going to talk about now that I wish I had during the time that we will be doing in a, like, what we say, this is point, 1.0, 2.0, like
2.0. Yeah.
Yeah. So as everything is growing, everything that we're doing that we're not talking about, because there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that you guys are not aware of, and we're not going to make anyone aware of yet. But sometimes you might feel on certain recordings, hey, they seem a little edgy. There's stuff that's happening behind the scenes that we can't talk about that sometimes get us a little pissed off. Or sometimes it's like, oh, wait, we had some really big wins or some really big connections, some really big things happening. So definitely go and check out the website, because that's where it's going to happen. So I would say in the next few weeks, it's going to be like piece by piece, but it will be things that you can print off and just have. And I know that you're going to be so thankful and so happy, because it's everything that I wish, everything that Brent wishes that we had. I mean, my kid's graduating. So I can't even use it. But one of the things that happens a lot in this space, and Brent, tell me if I'm wrong. And when we connected, I was kind of at a space where I was like, ugh, kind of not defeated, but I was like, okay, they're doing the best that they can. I can't fight anymore. He's happy. He's not upset. I'm talking about my kid. Like, I'm kind of just gliding, right? I'm just getting through things. Now, there was times in my life where I wasn't, and I was a huge advocate. I was learning and I was doing, but I was never taking it down and thinking, oh, how can I help the next person? Because I was so in it that I couldn't think past it, right? I was like, so like kind of in that survivor mode we talk about, that I couldn't get past it to be like, oh, wait, let me collect all this data that I can then share with the next person. And that's what we're doing, because I know a lot of you that are listening could be in parts that you're like, oh, right, I wish I had that. Or, you know what, I actually have something that you just mentioned it that really helped me. So if you guys want to email, you can email us, and Brent, we can throw your email out, or I can throw mine. This will also be in the show notes. You can find us on Instagram. You can send us stuff in there. You can Brent Sopel, I am Juliette Hahn, whatever. You guys can go there and just say, hey, this worked. I really found that was a helpful thing. And I'm going to let you talk because I really collapsed there.
And there's just a lot of information. Obviously we talk a lot. So there's a lot of information to kind of put together and to be able to make those checklists and, make that resource tab and continue to add on there. So unfortunately, it doesn't happen overnight, but there's a crazy amount of information that needs to be put together, but it's being put together and with an ending point, sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And it's almost like that roadmap that you talk about. And I want to talk to like all the people, anyone that has been married. If you think, and I love this reference, Bridget Burke Brown, I'm calling you out. She actually said, like, kind of laid this out in our head, because we've been talking about stuff again behind the scenes. We do a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you guys just are not aware of. We have panels, we have people. Oh, there's my thumbs up. Oh, that's a thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
That's F you. Down. Yeah, that's a negative guy. I don't need any negative right now. It's kind of hilarious. So that we kind of it just sums up.
Perfect, par for the course.
Yeah. But if you guys have been married, and there was like the not.com back in the day, and it gave you the checklist of all the things that you need to do, we have just some really big ideas that are going to be like a roadmap. So when you're in this kind of, this is what I would always say in these times. Like, do you ever feel like you're in the lake with a little straw, and that straw is like the tiny little tip of the straw is out, and you're just breathing, but you're fucking drowning. I mean, you are drowning, and you just have a little bit above that's like getting you through. We know how that is. We know how that is at the end of school year. We know how that is in the beginning of the school year. We know how it is when your kid comes home and is crying because they've had a miserable day, and you are maybe just holding on by a thread, and it's like, oh, I can't take anymore. So that is what, this podcast, one of it is supposed to give you hope, that there is hope. There is stuff that we are doing. It's also to educate, because we can't change until we educate. But just know there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of stuff.
Can't get to 2, do you get to 1?
I'm going to leave it there. Did you have other stuff that you wanted to add, or are you good?
Nope.
All right. So you guys, you know what we say every time. Say it again. Like, rate, review, and share, because you don't know who is dyslexic that's not fucking talking about it. You don't know who in your world is struggling. You don't know who is out there, putting on the face like, hey, yeah, no, all's good. And they go home and they're like, a puddle because things are not good, because maybe their kid's struggling and they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't feel understood. They don't have the resources. And that is what we are doing, one podcast at a time, one conversation at a time. So like, rate, review, and share. You have nothing else you want to add?
No.
All right. We'll see you guys for another episode of Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed.